Alright, welcome back. This is part 3 of the Airframe Written Test Bank. In brake service work, the term bleeding brakes is the process of withdrawing fluid from the system for the purpose of removing air that has entered the system. To prevent a very rapid extension of an oleo shock strut after initial compression resulting from landing impact. Various types of valves or orifices are used which restrict the reverse fluid flow. The pilot reports the right brake on an aircraft is spongy when the brake pedal is depressed in a normal manner. The probable cause is air in the brake hydraulic system. Why do most aircraft tire manufacturers recommend that the tubes in newly installed tires be first inflated, fully deflated, and then reinflated to the correct pressure? To allow the tube to position itself correctly inside the tire. The metering pins in oleo shock struts serve to retard the flow of oil as the struts are compressed. What action should be taken whenever maintenance is performed that will affect the landing gear system performance? The aircraft should be placed on jacks and a retraction test done. When working with high pressure, high performance tires, why is it recommended to deflate the tires when removing wheels from the axle? To ensure safety in case of defective wheel or broken tie bolts. The braking action of a Cleveland disc brake is accomplished by compressing the rotating brake disc between two opposite brake linings. How is equal pressure on both sides of the rotating disc assured? By allowing the caliper to float to automatically equalize the pressure that is applied to the rotor. If it is determined that spongy brake action is not caused by air in the brake system, what is the next most likely cause? Deteriorated flexible hoses. Many brake types can be adapted to operate mechanically or hydraulically. Which type is not adaptable to mechanical operation? Expander tube type. A brake debooster valve is installed in systems where the high pressure of the hydraulic system, 3000 psi, is used to operate brakes that are designed to work with lower pressure. A stripe or mark applied to a wheel rim and extending onto the sidewall of a tube-type tire is a slippage mark. When bleeding aircraft brakes, one of the indications that the air has been purged from the system is firm brake pedals. Overinflated aircraft tires may cause damage to the wheel flange. Debooster valves are used in brake systems primarily to reduce the pressure and release the brakes rapidly. The repair for an out-of-tolerance toe-in condition of main landing gear wheels determined not to be the result of bent or twisted components consists of inserting, removing, or changing the location of washers or spacers at the center pivotal point of the scissor torque links. On an air valve core stem, what indicates high pressure type? Embossed letter H. The primary purpose for balancing aircraft wheel assemblies is to prevent heavy spots and reduce vibration. power boost brake systems are used on aircraft that have high landing speeds. How does a multi-disc brake system work? Hydraulic pressure being applied to a piston that causes the entire stack of stators and rotors to be compressed. On all aircraft equipped with retractable landing gear, some means must be provided to extend the landing gear if the normal operating mechanism fails. An automatic dampening action occurs at the steer damper if for any reason the flow of high pressure fluid is removed from the inlet of the steel dampener. What is the purpose of the torque links attached to the cylinder and piston of a landing gear oleo strut? Maintain correct wheel alignment. The removal, installation, and repair of landing gear tires by the holder of a private pilot certificate on an aircraft owned or operated is considered to be preventative maintenance. Aircraft brakes requiring a large volume of fluid to operate the brakes generally use power brake control valves. What is one effect a restricted compensator port of a master cylinder will have on a brake system? The restriction will cause slow release of the brakes. When an air oil type of landing gear shock strut is used, the initial shock of the landing is cushioned by the fluid being forced through a metered opening. Internal leakage in a brake master cylinder unit can cause the pedal to slowly creep down while pedal pressure is applied. A sleeve, spacer, or bumper ring is incorporated in a landing gear oleo shock strut to limit the extension stroke. The purpose of a sequence valve in a hydraulic retractable landing gear system is to ensure operation of the landing gear and gear doors in the proper order. The pressure source for power brakes is the main hydraulic system. Which statement is true with respect to an aircraft equipped with hydraulically operated multi-disc type brake assemblies? Do not set parking brake when brakes are hot. When towing an aircraft with a tail wheel, what must be done to avoid damage to the tail wheel? Unlock the wheel. What type of valve is used in the brake actuating line to isolate the emergency brake system from the normal power brake control valve system? A shuttle valve. When servicing an air oil shock strut with MIL 5606, the strut should be collapsed and fluid added at the filler opening. Instructions concerning the type of fluid and amount of air pressure to be put in a shock strut are found in the aircraft manufacturer's service manual. The purpose of a relief valve in a brake system is to compensate for thermal expansion. Aircraft tire pressure should be checked at least once a week or more often. If the extended longitudinal axis of the main landing gear wheel assemblies intersects after the aircraft, the wheels can be termed as having toe out. What is the purpose of a compensating port or valve in a brake master cylinder of an independent brake system? Permits the fluid to flow toward or away from the reservoir as temperature changes. If an aircraft shock strut, air oil type, bottoms upon initial landing contact but functions correctly during taxi, the most probable cause is low fluid. What is the function of a cam incorporated in a nose gear shock strut? Straightens the nose wheel. Extension of an oleo shock strut is measured to determine the proper operating position of the strut. What would be the result of a landing gear sequencing valve being out of adjustment? Interference of landing gear doors. Debooster cylinders are used in brake systems primarily to reduce the pressure to the brake and increase the volume of fluid flow. If a shock strut bottoms after it has been properly serviced, the strut should be removed, disassembled, and inspected. A high-speed aircraft tire with a sound cord body and bead may be recapped an indefinite number of times. If an airplane equipped with master cylinders and single disc brakes has excessive brake pedal travel, but the brakes are hard and effective, the probable cause is worn brake linings. The correct inflation pressure for an aircraft tire can be obtained from the Aircraft Service Manual. What should be checked when a shock strut bottoms during a landing? Fluid level. How is it determined in a master cylinder brake system that all of the air has been purged from the system? By depressing the brakes and noting that the brake is firm and not spongy. The left brake is dragging excessively on an airplane on which no recent brake service work has been performed. The most probable cause is foreign particles stuck in the master cylinder compensating port. If a brake booster is used in a hydraulic brake system, its position in the system will be between the brake control valve and the brake actuating cylinder. The hydraulic packing seals, O-rings, used in a landing gear shock strut are only used with a specific type of fluid. Lockout deboosters are primarily pressure-reducing valves that allow full debooster piston travel without fluid from the high-pressure side entering the low-pressure chamber. A close inspection of the fusible plug reveals the core has experienced some deformation. What is the appropriate maintenance procedure? Replace all the fusible plugs. Chines are used on some aircraft nose wheel tires to help deflect water away from the fuselage. The best safeguards against heat buildup in aircraft tires are short ground rolls, slow taxi speeds, minimum braking, and proper tire inflation. The fusible plugs installed in some aircraft wheels will melt at a specified elevated temperature. What action, if any, should be taken when there is a difference of more than 5 pounds of air pressure in tires mounted as duals? Correct the discrepancy and enter in logbook. How long should you wait after a flight before checking tire pressure? At least 2 hours, 3 hours in hot weather. What is the minimum amount of time to wait for a tire to cool before checking tire pressure? 3 hours. Excessive wear in the shoulder area of an aircraft tire is an indication of underinflation. Excessive wear in the center of the tread of an aircraft tire is an indication of overinflation. When servicing an empty shock strut with fluid, The strut should be completely compressed and extended several times to ensure proper packing ring seating and removal of air bubbles. In shock struts, chevron seals are used to prevent oil from escaping. On most aircraft, the oil level of an air and oil shock strut is checked by releasing the air and seeing that the oil is to the level of the filler plug. A pilot reports that the brake pedals have excessive travel. A probable cause is lack of fluid in the brake system. When will a continuous horn provide a warning in the cockpit? When the throttle is retarded and the gear is not down and locked. An electric motor used to raise and lower a landing gear would most likely be a split-field series wound motor. When installing a chevron-type seal in an aircraft hydraulic cylinder, the open side of the seal should face the direction of fluid pressure. Nose gear centering cams are used in many retractable landing gear systems. The primary purpose of the centering device is to center the nose wheel before it enters the wheel well. What device in a hydraulic system with a constant delivery pump allows circulation of the fluid when no demands are on the system? Pressure regulator. A fully charged hydraulic accumulator provides a source for additional hydraulic power when heavy demands are placed on the system. A hydraulic system referred to as a power pack system will have all hydraulic power components located in one unit. What is the advantage of having a hydraulic power pack system? Reduces weight. A flexible hydraulic hose identified as MIL-H8788 will have a stripe running the length of the hose. This stripe is installed without excessive twisting. An O-ring intended for use in a hydraulic system using MIL-H5606 mineral-based fluid will be marked with a blue stripe or dot. What condition would most likely cause excessive fluctuation of the pressure gauge when the hydraulic pump is operating? Inadequate supply of fluid. A filter incorporating specially treated cellulose paper is identified as micronic filter. The purpose of an orifice check valve is to restrict flow in one direction and allow free flow in the other. Referring to Figure 10, the trunnion nut on an aircraft landing gear requires a torque of 320 inch-pounds. To reach the nut, a 2-inch straight adapter must be used on an 18-inch torque wrench. How many foot-pounds will be indicated on the torque wrench when the required torque of the nut is reached? 24. A special bolt in a landing gear attachment requires a torque value of 440 inch-pounds. How many foot-pounds are required? 36.6. To protect seals from damage when installed over a threaded section, the threaded section should be covered with a suitable sleeve. Which of the following is the most commonly used seal to prevent internal and external leakage in both directions of a hydraulic unit? O-ring. Which of the following allows fluid to flow unimpeded in one direction but prevents fluid flow in the other direction? Check valve. Select the valve used in a hydraulic system that directs pressurized fluid to one end of an actuating cylinder and simultaneously directs return fluid to the reservoir from the other end. Selector. What function does the absolute pressure regulator perform in a pneumatic power system? Regulates the compressor inlet air to provide a stabilized source of air for the compressor. Regarding the above statements, 1. Relief valves are used in pneumatic systems as damage-preventing units. 2. Check valves are used in both hydraulic and pneumatic systems. Both number 1 and number 2 are true. For several of these coming regarding the above statement questions, all the answers will be both number 1 and number 2 are true. One of the distinguishing characteristics of an open center selector valve used in a hydraulic system is that fluid flows through the valve in the off position. What type of packings should be used in hydraulic components to be installed in a system containing skydraw? Packing materials made for ester-based fluids. Relief valves are used in pneumatic systems as damage-preventing units. An aircraft pneumatic system, which incorporates an engine-driven multi-stage reciprocating compressor, also requires a moisture separator. The removal of air from an aircraft hydraulic system is generally accomplished by operating the various hydraulic components through several cycles. Pneumatic systems utilize relief valves. The component in the hydraulic system that is used to direct the flow of fluid is the selector valve. What type of selector valve is one of the most commonly used in hydraulic systems to provide for simultaneous flow of fluid into and out of a connected actuating unit? 4-port closed center valve. What is the purpose of using backup rings with O-rings in hydraulic systems above 1500 psi? Prevent high pressure from extruding the seal between the moving and stationary part. The purpose of the pressure regulator in a hydraulic system is to maintain system operating pressure with a predetermined range and to unload the pump. A flexible sealing element subject to motion is a packing. Which characteristics apply to aircraft hydraulic systems? Minimum maintenance requirements, lightweight, and simple to inspect. If a rigid tube is too short for the flare to reach its seat before tightening, pulling it into place by tightening may distort the flare. The installation of a new metal hydraulic line should be made with enough bends to allow the tube to expand and contract with temperature changes and to absorb vibration. Extrusion of an O-ring seal is prevented in a high-pressure system by the use of a backup ring on the side of the O-ring away from the pressure. What is one advantage of piston-type hydraulic motors over electric motors? There is no fire hazard if the motor is stalled. Generally, the first step in removing an accumulator from an aircraft is to relieve system pressure. Referring to Figure 11, the AN flared tube fitting is referred to in which picture? 1. Referring to Figure 12, which illustrations show or shows the correct spiral for Teflon backup rings? 1 and 3. If a hydraulic brake system uses neoprene rubber packing materials, the correct hydraulic fluid to service the system is mineral base oil. The internal resistance of a fluid which tends to prevent it from flowing is called viscosity. What is the viscosity of hydraulic fluid? The internal resistance of a fluid which tends to prevent it from flowing. Which is a characteristic of petroleum-based hydraulic fluid? Flammable under normal conditions. When servicing aircraft hydraulic systems, use the type of fluid specified in the aircraft manufacturer's maintenance manual or instruction plate affixed to the unit. Regarding the above statements, when servicing aircraft hydraulic systems, use the type of fluid specified in the aircraft manufacturer's maintenance manual or on the instruction plate affixed to the reservoir or unit. Hydraulic fluids for an aircraft are dyed a specific color for each type of fluid. Regarding those statements, both number 1 and number 2 are true. Petroleum-based hydraulic fluid is which color? Red. Which of the following is adversely affected by atmospheric humidity left unprotected? Skydraw hydraulic fluid. Which is a characteristic of synthetic-based hydraulic fluid? High flash point. Which statement about fluids is correct? All fluids readily transmit pressure. Two types of hydraulic fluids currently being used in civil aircraft are mineral base and phosphate ester base. Which of the following lists only desirable properties of a good hydraulic fluid that has chemical stability? Low viscosity, high flash point, high fire point. Characteristics of MILH 8446 Skydraw 500 A and B hydraulic fluid are light purple color, phosphate ester base, fire resistance, butyl rubber seals. Where can information be obtained about the compatibility of fire-resistant hydraulic fluid with aircraft materials? Fluid manufacturers' technical bulletins. Characteristics of MILH 5606 hydraulic fluid are red color, petroleum base, will burn, synthetic rubber seals. Characteristics of MILH 7644 hydraulic fluid are blue color, vegetable base, will burn, natural rubber seals. If an aircraft hydraulic system requires mineral-based hydraulic fluid but phosphate ester-based hydraulic fluid is used, what will be the effect on the system? System will be contaminated, fluids will not blend, and the seals will fail. What is used to flush a system normally serviced with MIL H5606 hydraulic fluid. Naphtha or Varsol. Components containing phosphate ester base hydraulic fluid may be cleaned with Stoddard solvent. How can the proper hydraulic fluid to be used in an airplane be determined? By consulting the aircraft manufacturer's service manual. Phosphate ester base hydraulic fluid is very susceptible to contamination from water in the atmosphere. Materials which are Skydraw compatible or resistant include common aircraft metals, polyurethane, and epoxy paints. The hydraulic component that automatically directs fluid from either the normal source or an emergency source to an actuating cylinder is called a shuttle valve. What is commonly used to connect an emergency source of power and at the time disconnect the normal hydraulic source from critical parts of a landing gear or wheel braking system for operation, usually when the normal source system fails? A shuttle valve. The primary purpose of a hydraulic actuating unit is to transform fluid pressure into useful work. The primary function of the flap overload valve is to prevent the flaps from being lowered at air speeds which would impose excessive structural loads. A unit which transforms hydraulic pressure into linear motion is called an actuating cylinder. If it is necessary to adjust several pressure regulating valves in a hydraulic system, what particular sequence, if any, should be followed? Units with the highest pressure settings are adjusted first. If an aircraft's constant pressure hydraulic system cycles more frequently than usual and no fluid leakage can be detected, the most probable cause is low accumulator air preload. Unloading valves are used with many engine-driven hydraulic pumps to relieve the pump pressure. What safety device is usually located between the driving unit and the hydraulic pump drive shaft? Pump drive coupling shear section. Which valve installed in a hydraulic system will have the highest pressure setting? Thermal relief valve. Excluding lines, which components are required to make up a simple hydraulic system? Pump, reservoir, selector valve, and actuator. Most variable displacement aircraft hydraulic pumps in use contain a built-in means of system pressure regulation. In a gear-type hydraulic pump, a mechanical safety device incorporated to protect the pump from overload is the shear pin. After installation of a rebuilt hydraulic hand pump, it is found that the handle cannot be moved in the pumping direction. The most likely cause is an incorrectly installed hand pump outport check valve. Pressure is a term used to indicate the force per unit area. Pressure is usually expressed in pounds per square inch. If two actuating cylinders which have the same cross-sectional area but different lengths of stroke are connected to the same source of hydraulic pressure, they will exert equal amounts of force and will move at the same rate of speed. Using a hand pump, pressure of 100 psi has been built up in the hydraulic system. The hand pump piston is a 1 inch in diameter. A half-inch line connects the hand pump to an actuating cylinder 2 inches in diameter. What is the pressure in the line between the hand pump and the actuator? 100 psi. Heat exchanger cooling units are required in some aircraft hydraulic systems because of high pressures and high rates of fluid flow. Which is true regarding the ground check of a flap operating mechanism which has just been installed. If the time required to operate the mechanism decreases with successive operations, it indicates the air is being worked out of the system. A hydraulic system operational check during ground run-up of an aircraft indicates that the wing flaps cannot be lowered using the main hydraulic system, but can be lowered by using emergency hand pump, which is the most likely cause. The fluid level in the reservoir is low. Many hydraulic reservoirs contain a small quantity of fluid which is not available to the main system pump. This fluid is retained to supply fluid to the auxiliary pump. The unit in a hydraulic system that requires a certain action to be completed before another action can begin is called a sequence valve. The purpose of a hydraulic pressure regulator is to relieve the pump of its load when no actuating units are being operated. Severe kickback of the emergency hydraulic hand pump handle during normal intake stroke will indicate which of the following. The hand pump outlet check valve is sticking open. What type of valve in an aircraft hydraulic system permits fluid to flow freely in one direction, but restricts the rate at which fluid is allowed to flow in the other direction? Orifice check valve. The main system pressure relief valve in a simple hydraulic system equipped with a power control valve should be adjusted with the power control valve held in the closed position. Which of the following safeguards ensures proper system operation and mitigates damage to non-metallic components of the hydraulic system? When adding fluid to a system, use the type specified in the aircraft manufacturer's maintenance manual or on the instruction plate affixed to the reservoir or unit being serviced. A hydraulic accumulator is charged with an air preload of 1000 psi. When a hydraulic system pressure of 3000 psi is developed, the pressure on the air side of the accumulator will be 3000 psi. How is the air in a hydraulic accumulator prevented from entering the fluid system? By physically separating the air chamber from the oil chamber with a flexible or movable separator. After a hydraulic accumulator has been installed and air chamber charged, the main system hydraulic pressure gauge will not show the hydraulic pressure reading until the fluid side of the accumulator has been charged. Which must be done before adjusting the relief valve of a main hydraulic system incorporating a pressure regulator. Eliminate the action of the unloading valve. Which seals are used with petroleum-based hydraulic fluid? Buna N. Seals used with mineral-based hydraulic fluid are identified by which color code? Blue dot or strip. Which seals are used with vegetable-based hydraulic fluids? Natural rubber. The air that is expended and no longer needed when an actuating unit is operated in a pneumatic system is exhausted or dumped, usually overboard. Some hydraulic systems incorporate a device which is designed to remain open to allow a normal fluid flow in the line but closes if the fluid flow increases above an established rate. This device is generally referred to as hydraulic fuse. When hydraulic system pressure control and relief units fail to function properly, how are most systems protected against overpressure? A shear section on the main hydraulic pump drive shaft. A worn hydraulic pump shaft seal can normally be detected by hydraulic fluid flowing from the pump drain line. If an engine-driven hydraulic pump of the correct capacity fails to maintain normal system pressure during the operation of a cowl flap actuating unit, the probable cause is restriction in the pump outlet. Before removing the filler cap of a pressurized hydraulic reservoir in order to service the system, you must relieve the air pressure. What happens to the output of a constant displacement hydraulic pump when the hydraulic system pressure regulator diverts fluid from the system to the reservoir? The output pressure reduces, but the volume remains the same. Hydraulic system accumulators serve which of the following functions? Supplement the system pump when demand is beyond the pump's capacity and store power for limited operation of components if the pump is not operating. Chattering of the hydraulic pump during operation is an indication that air is entering the pump. Quick disconnect couplings in hydraulic systems provide a means of quickly connecting and disconnecting hydraulic lines without the loss of fluid or entrance of air into the system. Which seal/material is used with phosphate ester-based hydraulic fluids? Butyl rubber. A hydraulic pump is a constant displacement type if it delivers a uniform rate of fluid flow. A hydraulic motor converts fluid pressure to rotary motion. A cross-flow valve, which is designed to bypass fluid from one side of an actuating cylinder to the other side under certain conditions, may be found in some aircraft installed in the landing gear system. Hydraulic fluid filtering elements constructed of porous paper are normally discarded at regular intervals and replaced with new filtering elements.